Hi, I'm Mike Dano with Light Reading, and we're here at the MWC Vegas trade show looking straight outside to the giant sphere that's right outside of the trade show that we've all been marveling at for the past week or so. But here inside the convention center, there's lots of stuff to talk about, but we're here to talk about network APIs. So I'm here with Alex from the GSMA, you guys about a year ago announced an initiative called Open API Gateway. Right? Open Gateway API.
Open Gateway.
And it's all about network APIs. And in the intervening year or so, now we've kind of been talking about this concept for years now, but really just recently in the past few months, it feels like there's been a lot of momentum in this area and a lot of sort of definitive launches. I mean, I covered Dish Network very heavily. They're publishing their network APIs. Ericsson is working with Deutsche Telekom. Like, there's some what feels to be some definitive movement in this area. So maybe you can just tell us what that initiative is, and then we can talk about kind of where we are today.
Oh, sure. So, Mike, as you know, because you're here at the show, carriers around the world have been investing hundreds of billions of dollars in things like 5G and edge networks.
Yeah.
That's a wealth of new network assets that are just waiting to be exploited. So the whole purpose of the initiative really is to expose them in a simple way, so that cloud players, developers can access them from anywhere in the world and at scale. So we started the initiative, we launched it in Barcelona about 7 months ago.
Yep.
Since then, we've got 35 carrier and carrier groups. Doesn't sound like many, but they actually account for 60% of the global mobile connections around the world.
Yeah.
So that's pretty exciting. We're using an open source approach. So we're using what we call the Camara repository. It's a Linux Foundation project. We've already got a bunch of APIs in there. They range from things like fraud mitigation, SIM swap, number verify, all the way through to quality on demand and edge discovery. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. I feel like these are the sort of advanced services that the kind of industry has been talking about a long time. But we've just in the past couple of weeks we've seen carriers actually announce the availability of some of these APIs. That they're now out there for people to actually use. The same with network slicing. Even just here at the show, we had an announcement about the commercial availability of an official network slice. It's like a lot of these things that we've been talking about at these shows for years are now actually hitting the market as commercial services. So maybe you can just tell us a little bit about, like, from the perspective of the GSMA, what does success look like for this API initiative? Like, what are you sort of pushing on for maybe the remainder of this year in terms of official goals that you're meeting?
So the first thing I should say, those 35 carrier and carrier groups are committed to launch this year. So that's a very good start. But if you want to skip to the end game, I mean, we want a world basically where we can effectively democratize the consumption of these APIs to literally millions of developers all over the world. If you want an analogy, it's a little bit like the rise of global roaming in the early 90s, where you could literally get voice and data services anywhere on the planet with the same device.
Yeah.
It's that level of ubiquity we're looking at. But the ultimate aim really is to get those developers using these very advanced network capabilities to create a whole plethora of new services, like a wave of new innovation in the telco space, which we sadly need. That's what we're aiming for.
Okay. And I mean, I'm assuming a big part of this whole discussion is making sure that the API is the same. Like you said, with roaming, it works internationally. It's the same roaming no matter where you are. I'm assuming the API effort is sort of, the goal is the same. It's like, this API works in this country the same way that this API works in this country, right?
Exactly.
Is that the goal?
Exactly. Okay. So that's why we're using the Camara repository.
Okay.
It's not a blue flavor, a red flavor, an orange flavor. They have to be the same.
Okay.
And we're also working on, it's not just the standardization of the technical APIs, it's harmonization of the commercials, because that can get pretty complex as well. Because effectively, one developer or a cloud player could do a deal with, say, AT&T here in the US, but have access to maybe edge capabilities on the other side of the planet. So in that sense, the kind of federation, it's similar in concept to roaming. It's obviously not roaming, but it's a very similar sort of commercial concept.
Yeah. Is there a way to sort of make sure that those APIs are deployed? I mean, is there sort of like a checks and balances to make sure that this is all interoperable? Are you relying on some of the vendors like Nokia? Both Nokia and Ericsson announced platforms for this kind of thing. Are they the ones that are kind of making sure that this is all working as it should work? Is that the way to check that?
At the GSMA, we're going to be running a certification program. So we're going to be doing a light touch certification to make sure the APIs really are the same.
Okay.
Obviously, we are working with partners. We're working with the cloud players. So we've got AWS, Azure. You've mentioned Ericsson. We've got Vonage, Infobit, Nokia. So yeah, we're working with a lot of other players as well in the space just to make sure it really happens.
Okay. Last question for you. This is the bonus round of questions now, which is it's really about monetization and demand, and that's kind of why you guys are working on this, is to create a way for network operators to make more money, to sell more stuff, and to have developers connect into their network. So the question is like, what kind of demand? Now that you guys are starting to publish these APIs. Have you seen any indications of early demand for that? And also, again, bonus question, like, what does the financial situation look like for those APIs? Meaning, like, are people going to pay for them?
So let's start with the simple stuff. We have seen a lot of interest. I mean, if you take quality on demand alone, the idea of somebody being able to get what we call like a speed boost. Say you're playing an online game or something, and for the next 15 minutes you're playing Fortnite, I don't know, something like that, and you want to make absolutely sure you're not going to have drop packets or watch your FPS rate go down the toilet, then quality of demand is exactly the sort of thing you can use for that. Obviously, it's early days, and when we talk about monetization, we prefer to talk about value creation, because in most of the API economy, actually, they don't charge for the APIs. So some of the APIs on our side as well will be free, like maybe an edge discovery API leads to the consumption of an edge service. So not everything has to be literally charged for, but it does create a lot of value, and that's the key point, really.
Wow, okay. There you go. Very interesting stuff, right? Like, this is the kind of, it's sort of the culmination of a lot of these sort of fits and starts in the industry toward this kind of thing, but, to talk about actually publishing these, using them, very interesting. Anyway, Alex from GSA, thank you.
Thanks very much, Dan.